Hello, I'm Jason Barker. This is how I transfer beer from the fermenter into a keg, minimizing exposure to oxygen as much as possible. It's not oxygen free, but this method is a big step in the right direction for a lot of home brewers. And so instead of trying to type this all out and write it, I'm just going to show you how I do it. And then at the end, I'll give you some more tips and pointers on how to improve this process beyond what I'm going to show you. But this step right here, this process is a big step in the right direction, okay? So we're going to start with a keg that, let's assume it's clean, okay? So this is completely clean, not necessarily sanitized. So first thing you do is fill it with sanitizer. So I've got my stuff already here. I'm going to start filling this up. And we're going to fill this keg completely full of sanitizer. And by completely, I mean all the way. All the way. Not 5 gallons, all the way to the top, okay? The idea here is, A, we're going to sanitize the keg and remove the oxygen all in one step, okay? So as I fill it, I use SaniClean, not Star San, because Star San foams up more than SaniClean. And foam is trapped air. And we don't want to trap air. Okay, we want just liquid. Okay, so watch this. I'm going to fill it all the way up, and I've just overflowed it a little bit, so I know this is as full. Get it there. Boom. As full as possible with sanitizer. Okay, so it's full. Okay, sealed up. Now, there's going to be a little bit of trapped air in here where I just put that in. A little bit of trapped air. We want to get rid of that. Okay, so to do that, we purge the keg, hook up your gas to your inline. I should have lubricated it first. Okay, so the little bit of headspace in there has got air, oxygen. We want that out. So I'm going to purge. And so I'm pushing gas in, CO2 gas in, and releasing the pressure out. And it's going to spit liquid out, and that's fine. You're purging. And then also, if you think about it, there's also trapped air in the out tube. Okay, you know the out tube of your keg. Yeah, we filled it, but it may have trapped air in there. We want that out. So purge the out. You put something on it, or just push your finger like this until sanitizer comes out. So there's no air in your out tube. There's no air in your headspace in here because we've purged it a few times. You know, we've opened it, cycled gas in there. Okay, so now we can safely assume that there's no oxygen in this keg. Now, when I say no oxygen, I don't mean no oxygen, because there's going to be oxygen, but we've minimized it significantly and as easily as possible. Okay? So now we just push out all that sanitizer with the CO2 pressure, and the keg will be empty of sanitizer, and it will be replaced with CO2 from your CO2 tank. Pretty simple, huh? So use your out. Now I'm going to sanitize a couple of kegs. So I just transfer from one keg to the other, like this. That way I'm not wasting 5 gallons of sanitizer. Okay, so I've got my gas going in. I've got my liquid coming out. And so now this is transferring this sanitizer out of that keg into this keg. Okay, and then this will take a few minutes. Okay, so now I have transferred the sanitizer out of this keg into this keg. So this is empty and it's still pressurized with CO2. So see, as I try to get this out, there's still remnants of that sanitizer in the bottom. Okay, so at this point, this keg is ready to go. Okay, it's empty, it's been sanitized, it's pressurized with CO2. So you can hold this for quite a while. In other words, have this process done on the day that you're going to transfer from your fermenter into here, then it's ready to go. Now, from here, you're going to transfer your beer. Let's just say this is beer. It's not, but let's just say this is beer in the fermenter, and you're going to go into here. How do you do that as low exposure to oxygen as possible? This is how I do it. Now, this isn't my fermenter. I have different fermenters, but just for demonstration purposes. So there's a couple things going on. If you're going to siphon, well, let's say this. To get the beer into the keg, you want to splash it as little as possible, because splashing introduces it more oxygen to the surface area of the beer and will absorb it more rapidly. Okay, so we want a slow, gentle process as possible while exposing the beer to oxygen, the atmosphere, as little as possible. So right now, the exposure to oxygen would be however your fermenter is designed, and it's open to the atmosphere. Okay, so that just depends on your fermenter. I'm not really going to address that here. But knowing that if you open your fermenter to throw in a siphon, that now you're opening it to atmosphere. Now you probably have some CO2 gas on top of it from natural process of fermenting beer. So that will help protect the surface of the beer from being exposed to oxygen somewhat. Okay, meaning you don't want to leave it open for too long. The other end of that is once we start siphoning out of there and into here, this is going to be open. You have to open this to get the beer in. Okay, now it's open to atmosphere. So those processes, just be aware that you're opening it to the air, and so you want to minimize the time and the splashing. Okay, so in order to do that, let's start here. Take the pressure off the keg. Now I would do this much faster if I was not describing it to you. You'll get the gist. You open it up, okay? Now boom, right there, I've just opened this to atmosphere. Now it's full of CO2, and CO2 is heavier than air. So, but there's this misconception to say, well, if this is heavier than air, then the CO2 is going to stay in there because it's heavier. It's going to stay in the bottom, and so it won't mix with the environment. Okay, that's somewhat true, but there's also turbulence. So it doesn't take very long, now that I've opened this, for oxygen to start circulating in there. Okay, so it's not just this open it for an hour and then go, oh, it's heavier than air. The CO2 will still be at the bottom. So just know that when you open this, okay, the next thing is, and you got to kind of decide this for your own process, is we've flushed the sanitizer out of here, but there's still some in there, right? Just like at the bottom of anything, there's some in there. And you go, well, do you want that sanitizer in your beer? Sometimes it doesn't matter to some people, some it does. I used to think, well, the flavor of that little bit of sanitizer in 5 gallons of beer is nothing. It's not going to matter. Well, it will, depending on the type of beer you make and how good the beer is to begin with. But also, in that sanitizer is dissolved oxygen. There's oxygen in that sanitizer liquid. I'll touch on that more at the end. Okay, so by leaving that in, you are leaving in some oxygen to go into your beer. Okay, so then you go, well, how do you get that out? Well, you dump it out. So I've got the clear beer draft system in this, not a tube. So I have to put my hand over it. My hand over it. And yeah, see how much came out of there? Now, what I do is I set it this way and let all of that sanitizer out. I want all of that out. Because even though now I am exposing this keg to the atmosphere to oxygen. I'm not as concerned about that as I am the oxygen that's contained in that sanitizer, okay? Because the parts per billion is much higher. So you decide however you think is best and easiest for you to achieve the results you want. Again, this is just kind of a starter's primer on how to do this. Okay, so sanitizer's out of there. There's still CO2 in here, less, because now it's been out and it's been exposed, right? So it's less. So next we're going to siphon. Now siphoning, this process can create bubbles and splashing. So you want to start how do I say, I'm doing and talking at the same time. Start the process as gently as possible. So in other words, it wouldn't be like this. Let me just start over here so I'm doing a legit demonstration. Okay. So this is your fermenter with beer. This is your sanitized siphon. This is how I did it in the beginning. Is make sure the tube is long enough to reach the bottom of your keg. You want it clear in the bottom, and that's so there's no splashing. Okay, and then put this in your beer, and then start your siphon. And you want it gentle as possible. So see, you can even move this around to where the jet in there isn't splashing. See, I can hear it a little bit. There you go. So it's just as gentle. If it's too short and you hold it up here and the tube is right here, now you hear that? You're splashing. So any oxygen that's in this environment right here is more readily going to absorb into your beer. So you want that as slow, or not slow, but as smooth of transition as possible. Okay? Now if you wanted, you could take a sanitized towel or something and put it over like this to minimize the flow of air. It's not going to stop the oxygen, but you know what I mean? Turbulence of air. Same thing with however your fermenter is. They're all different. Okay? So in other words, right now is the critical time because this is exposed to the air and this is exposed to the air. So you want as fast as possible, but gentle. You also want to watch in here for bubbles. You know, sometimes bubbles get trapped. Oh shoot, I was gonna show you. You don't want that to happen. So sometimes during siphons, bubbles will get trapped in here, and you'll just see these bubbles. Not the end of the world, but that bubble is oxygen, and it's just sitting there, going against your beer, just sucking it in. So if you get oxygen trapped in here, stop it. Stop it by pinching this to where it backs this up. Okay. If you have a good siphon like this with a nice curved edge, it usually doesn't happen. And then, like you just saw what happened, when it starts to get near the end of your siphon, let's just say this is in the bottom of the fermenter and your liquid level's here, and it goes down, 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 and it's about to run out. What does it do? It starts to suck air, right? You're oxygenating the hell out of your beer. By sucking that air in there, it goes in here, and now you've just exposed it. So when it starts getting to the end, pay attention, okay? Like with me, sometimes I tip the fermenter if I need to, but I'm watching immediately. And as soon as I think it's either the keg is full or I'm about to run out, I control the flow by just pinching the tube. So in other words, I'm watching, and if I'm ready to stop, I can kink the tube and or pull the tube out of here, minimizing splashing. However you want to stop that, but keep that from sucking that air up into there, okay? Also, you're mindful of how deep this is in there, because let's say it's not deep enough and it sucks air and stops the siphon, and you go, oh crap, there's still beer in there. Well, now you got to start it again, okay? And you've just splashed your beer around. So all of those things. So when you stop, say it's in here, it's getting near the end, and you're like, okay, this is almost full. And depending on where you're doing it, if I have too much beer, I let it go, just like I did my sanitizer. Let it fill up. It's going to just take up space, displace the air. Let it go. So now I'm ready. I pinch it off, pull this up, immediately get this out, and then now be ready with your sanitized lid and stick that in the beer, seal it off, and then immediately purge it. Same way, because it's a time bomb. That is going to be exposed to air right there. And so you want that off as fast as possible. So give it a little bit of gas, open your pressure relief valve, and let that cycle through and purge that headspace that's in there. Okay? Now, how long to do that? I have no idea. I just do it for a while. You figure there's not much headspace, like this much, so cycling through some CO2. And then also don't forget to purge the outpost for the same reason. It's either got sanitizer in it or air. So, take your finger, whatever, your picnic tap, get that air out of there till it flows beer. Okay? So now you've got your keg full and purged, and you're done. Okay? So that's how I first initially started doing it. Holes and gaps in this system that you want to improve. Now, if you have a fermenter that has a valve in it instead of a siphon, much better, okay? Because you don't have to deal with that apparatus. You would just attach the hose here, make sure it reaches the bottom of your keg. Now, I've had situations where the hose wasn't long enough to reach the bottom of the keg. In that case, just stand here and hold it for a while. If the hose only comes to here, just pick up your empty keg to there until it fills up. But otherwise, minimize that. So a hole right there is good. Now, some gaps in that system. In water, tap water, there is dissolved oxygen. Oxygen is naturally dissolved into water. And you used that water to make your sanitizer, didn't you? So that means that liquid sanitizer contains oxygen. So know that just because it's full of liquid and we pushed it all out with CO2 doesn't mean there's no oxygen. It means there's a lot less, okay? So to be perfect, you could boil the 5 gallons of sanitizer water first, which drives out all the oxygen, then mix your sanitizer concentrate in it, then use that to sanitize your keg. I never do that. I haven't gone to that extent. I don't think that makes a big enough difference for the effort, okay? But you should just know that that liquid contains oxygen, okay? The next thing is, if you're buying CO2 from a supplier like we all do, this is not 100%, 100.0% pure CO2. It's like 99.9. The rest is oxygen, contains some oxygen in there. So also know that that's not 100% pure. It's very pure, but it's not 100%. Again, what could you do about it? Well, there's some advanced techniques, but just know that there's a little bit of oxygen in that. And then, of course, the biggest exposures in this process I just showed you are opening the fermenter and then opening this, okay? So with some advanced equipment, you can have 0 oxygen transfers, which you never open the fermenter, and you could go right into the keg via one of these posts and go in that way. Those are advanced methods. But to get you started and get your mind thinking about oxygen free, this is how I did it for years. I do it a little more advanced now, but generally that's the idea. Okay, I think that's it. Good luck. Happy brewing.